The consensus is in, The Rise of Skywalker completely failed to entertain most people who saw it, and even though it was heavily criticised, I don't think the main reason why was the main plot, although if you wanted to dissect this film's plot, you'd have an absolute field day. For one, it feels like it's ripped straight from a video game, where it's essentially nothing more than a MacGuffin hunt. All the characters are doing is going from area to area, finding MacGuffin after MacGuffin, and the climax suddenly happens. And it's not because there's been this strong rising action, as every choice the protagonist has made has built on top of the other with rising personal stakes, and it's led them down this inevitable path to face the consequences of their combined actions. That was a bloody mouthful. Instead, when Rey faces down Palpatine, it feels more like she's finally unlocked the boss level of the game, because she's managed to collect all 3 keys from the desert level, then the city level, and the water level. But that's not the biggest reason why this film failed to engage its audience, because it's absolutely worth saying that while this kind of plot is, to be honest, it's quite common in some of the more boring stories out there, that doesn't mean it can't be done well. And I've seen quite a few games and movies where the characters are on a quest to find the MacGuffins, and they're still great stories. Avengers Endgame is probably the most popular example of this, specifically the time heist where they're hunting down the Infinity Stones. Like, both Endgame and The Rise of Skywalker have MacGuffin hunts that take up a large chunk of their runtime, and it totally works in Avengers Endgame, but for some reason Star Wars just doesn't pull that off anywhere near as well. And why is that? It's because the Russos understood that key aspect of a story that makes the difference between any MacGuffin-based plot working or failing, and that difference is character. All too often, these kinds of plots make for really boring fiction, because the writer forgets that in any kind of MacGuffin-based plot, because the plot itself isn't terribly exciting, they need to put a massive amount of focus onto the characters as they grow and change, as they overcome compelling internal conflict that has the audience gripped by their journeys. All the while, they just so happen to be hunting down magical stones or looking for a nav key. But that's the problem, and that's the subject of today's video, because the most grievous failing of The Rise of Skywalker isn't the plot, it's because it failed its characters as completely as it did. But that's not due to lack of trying. I mean, Abrams clearly tries to give Rey a character arc and give this story some much needed internal conflict. I mean, he doesn't pull it off, but he does try. With Rey, Abrams shows her getting angry at the training bot at the start, and when Kylo destroys the nav key, she throws a tantrum and gets all angry again, and it's presented like she's undergoing a character arc and is falling to the dark side because she's getting all emotional. But the issue is that there's no substance to back all that up beneath the surface. It's like Abrams was trying to make a cake by focusing exclusively on the frosting, and on the surface it may look like she's degrading as a character, but the moment you take a bite you realise that this cake is just a shell of icing, and at the centre is a hollow core. I mean, we even get that ultimate moment that any character arc has, where they make their final choice, and in this it's where Palpatine asks her to strike me down, and together we shall rule the galaxy. That was a really crappy impression. But it's really clear that J.J. Abrams tried to give Rey an arc in this film, and if he succeeded, like God, this movie would have been so much better for it. But the problem is, he failed, because when Palpatine says,
"Kill me, and my spirit will pass into you. You will be Empress,"
nobody anywhere thought she'd actually take him up on the offer. Like, nobody thought, oh well, I guess Rey really will fall to the dark side now, you know, because it's been so well set up. And the reason why this offer just doesn't work for the story isn't because the villain asking the hero to join him and then the hero triumphantly refusing is a bit cliche. I genuinely think that this moment could have made for a fantastic beat in this story if it was given the proper setup. Instead, it's because J.J. Abrams tried to make spaghetti bolognese without the spaghetti nor the bolognese. Like, Abrams didn't apply the fundamental ingredients that any character needs in order for moments like this to actually work. And I'll tell you what, if you want to have the ingredients to watch some movies that are better than this one, and you can't access certain sites because they're region blocked, okay, look, I'll level with you. I have no idea how to lead into this, like just pretend I did a good segue. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. I don't know about you, but like I'm bored as hell right now. Like, you know that green screen I had in like my other video? Well, I had to sell it so I could afford like an Amazon Prime Video subscription. And then I had to scrape the paint off the walls so I could sell that and afford a Netflix subscription. But the problem is, I've already seen all their videos, and Netflix only has like 10 good films on it at a time. The rest are just rubbish indie stuff that no one actually wants to watch. I live in the UK. Like, what if I could watch the USA or the Australian version of Netflix, where they have an entirely different category of great films for me to watch? If only there were a way to do that. Oh wait! There is, by using NordVPN. And if you click that link in the description, that's nordvpn.com/thecloserlook, or use code thecloserlook at the checkout, you'll get 70% off a 3-year plan, plus a month extra for free. That's a very good deal. You should do it, so I can have more money and pay my bills and be able to live.
Do it.
Oh no, I'm an average viewer of The Closer Look, and I'm bored! Thankfully, The Closer Look's uploaded and give me respite from my endless boredom, but once this video's over, I'm gonna be bored again. But look at all of those tantalising movies I could watch right now on other countries' Netflix. All I would have to do to watch them immediately is go to nordvpn.com/thecloserlook, or use code thecloserlook at the checkout. But how could I ever do that? For I have no body. And I am just a head. Anyway, back to it. These two ingredients that would have made Palpatine's offer work really well are both a want and a need. And I'm fairly sure that most of you know exactly what wants and needs are at this point, because I've talked about it in my Spider-Man video, and it's a kind of a bit of a common knowledge at this point. But as a quick recap for those who don't, a character's want is their surface level goal, and their need is a lesson that they gradually learn over the course of the story. And that lesson is almost always to learn how misguided their initial want is. That's really the bread and butter of any good character arc. For example, Iron Man wants to live a lavish life as a playboy devoid of responsibility, and his need is to see the consequences of his actions, realise his want is childish, and to learn to be a man who takes responsibility. Iron Man has a well-executed want and need in his first film, and as a result, his character has a thoroughly engaging arc. The kind of arc that this film desperately needed in order to remedy its incredibly unengaging video game plot. But when it comes to Rey in The Rise of Skywalker, Abrams was trying to go for a less traditional approach for doing an arc, and that approach is actually a really valid way of doing a character journey, by the way. Like, I think that if you do exactly what Abrams was trying to do right, I'd argue that it's the most engaging way to do an arc. And what Abrams was trying to do is convince us that Rey is going to fail her arc. And how does a character fail an arc? Well, it's basically when your character has that want that they're striving to achieve, and they have their need to learn a valuable lesson about how petty or wrong their want is, but in the end, they fail to realise their need, and as a result, their surface level wants consume them. And if you can write your stories in a way where the audience truly has no idea if your protagonist is going to succeed or fail in realising their need, which is what Abrams was trying to go for in this film, the keyword being trying, then your story will be incredibly engaging for it. But why does Palpatine's climactic offer actually come across as an empty, forced moment that just doesn't work for the narrative? It's because it's a moment that Abrams hasn't even remotely earned. And the biggest reason why this just doesn't work is Rey has never once voiced the desire for more power, like anywhere. So Palpatine offering her something that she has never once said she wanted, it comes across as an offer so hollow, like so lacking in narrative setup, that it completely fails to generate that juicy internal conflict that choices like these always should. And like, you haven't heard the best part. Hold on a second. The best part about all this is that Abrams realised how dreadful this moment was. He realised how weak the audience's fear was that she might turn to the dark side, so he panicked and ham-fisted in a blackmail motivation where Palpatine says,
They don't have long. Only you have the power to save them. Refuse, and your new family dies.
If there's one thing that feels like it's becoming a trend in recent movies, like the most terrible, terrible trend, it's that there's always a fallback plan for you as a writer. Basically, if you ever feel like you've done a crappy job at setting up a character motivation to do a certain thing, don't worry about going back and doing hard work to edit what you've already written and to make your whole character's motivation have a nice cohesion with exactly what they do. Just force a blackmail plot in there. Just have someone blackmail them into doing it. It's so easy. easy. I mean, Snyder did just that with Batman vs Superman. Like, Superman's motivation for fighting Batman was so, like, god-awful that Snyder panicked, just like Abrams did, and forced in a blackmail motivation. But here's the problem with why blackmail motivations just are a terrible substitute in moments like these. Because blackmail in itself can be a perfectly fine form of conflict, but the issue is it's an external form of conflict. It's an external force putting pressure on the protagonist to make a choice. The issue is that any and all forms of character arc need to have this end catharsis to come from inside as they independently make a choice, not from outside as someone forces them to make that choice for them. Otherwise, the catharsis is nowhere near as powerful as it might have otherwise been. It's really quite interesting because Abrams is trying to give Ray an arc in this film, but at the same time he's constantly undermining himself and is making every beat of her journey fall flat on its face and do the opposite of what it needs to do. Like, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to get out my marker pen now and make a few suggestions as to how Ray's arc could have been made, well, you know, an arc. All the while, I'm going to stay completely true to this film's plot. Firstly, Ray needs a wand. So at the start of this film, Ray's doing her obstacle course and she's failing at something. Maybe there's a massive boulder at the end which she just can't lift. Like, she's tried so many times and she has never been able to lift this boulder. It's an immovable object for her, and we see how desperate she is to be better as the opener for this movie. Then, while Ray is on the desert planet and they're being chased by those jetpack troops, one of the main characters is either killed or horribly wounded. It could be Leia or Poe or Finn, it doesn't really matter. The important part is that Ray tries to help them and she fails. One of the main characters is dead or terribly wounded because she wasn't good enough, and after, Finn says, "Ray, don't blame yourself for what happened. Like, none of us were powerful enough to stop it either." "Yeah, well, you're not a Jedi, are you?" she snaps. "It's fine for you, being normal, but you can't lift a mountain with your mind. Like, I'm the most powerful here. Therefore, your safety is my responsibility, but I can't even do that. Without my help, you don't stand a chance. But I can't give it to you because I'm just not good enough." And she voices how absolutely terrified she is at the idea of losing Finn and Poe and everyone else she loves because she's just not powerful enough. And we make it clear as day that that's her want. And gradually from this point on in the story, her want consumes her. This can't be like a normal arc where the character improves and improves. We need to have Ray degrade a bit because that's the angle Abrams was trying to go for, and it's the angle that best fits this movie's direction. So then she has her face-off against Kylo Ren in the desert, and he is kicking her ass. Like, since the last time, like, he has been training non-stop to beat her, and he's doing it flawlessly. He breaks her guard and readies for the killing blow, but just as she's a second away from death, fear takes hold of her. She taps into the dark side and accidentally uses Force Lightning just like she does in the film, and she just devastates him. He gets caught completely off guard by this, gets horribly hurt, and she forces him to retreat. And Kylo Ren, the most terrifying opponent that she's ever faced, she's completely bested in a fight because she embraced the dark side. Now she feels unstoppable. Like, she's always been afraid of being too weak, but now a whole new world's opened up as she starts experimenting with this new lightning power, and she is just in love. She feels so powerful and unstoppable, and we visually show this by her lifting a boulder that was way more heavy than the one that she couldn't lift at the start of the film. But the thing is, her friends have no idea about the light and dark side of the Force because why would they? They're not Jedi. So they just perceive these as cool new lightning powers, as why would they see them as anything else? But maybe Finn is the voice of reason, and he insists that she's in unexplored territory. She's doing something she doesn't understand, and she should just be cautious with these new powers. Then Ray blanks him or snaps a reply, saying she knows what's best for herself and to get off her back. Now we've generated some good, much needed conflict between the party, as Ray and Finn's friendship is getting strained by this disagreement. And as you can see, slowly, bit by bit, we're fleshing out not just the general internal conflict of this movie, but also Ray is falling deeper into her want to be more powerful, so she can protect those she loves. And as a result, this movie is far more engaging now because we have characters who actually go on interesting personal journeys. And if you ask me, that's the best way of remedying having a hackneyed MacGuffin-based plot. But here's the problem. At this point in the actual movie, movie, where Rey needed to use the dark side for the first time and have it go well for her in order to have like this comprehensive arc, we get Rey fighting with Kylo to save Chewie's ship, but she accidentally uses the lightning and kills Chewie. Or, you know, she thinks she does. And this moment, what Abrams was trying to make an indicator that Rey is falling to the dark side, actually does nothing for her arc. In fact, I'd argue that it has like a catastrophic, ruinous effect for any kind of arc that Abrams is trying to give her. And why? Because at the core of any good failed arc is temptation. This moment where she uses the lightning does the perfect opposite of what this moment should be doing for her. Like, she's been using the light side of the Force the whole time she's been a Jedi, and the one time she slips and uses the dark, Chewbacca dies because of it. Or, you know, she thinks he's died. If this moment achieved anything, it would make Rey completely and utterly refuse to use the dark side ever again. All this moment does for Rey's character is validate her beliefs and her teachings that the dark side should always be avoided, because the one time she used it, one of her best friends died. Like, she even expresses terrible remorse for using the dark side on the ship afterwards. And if you're trying to build an arc where they're slowly being seduced by a darker side of themselves, like, this is a nonsensical way to go about it. Like, hell, if not what I just suggested about her beating Kylo with the Force lightning, we could have had it go the other way, where Rey and Kylo were fighting over the ship, but instead of her blowing it up, Kylo uses the dark side and in some way overpowers her with it and lets the ship escape, therefore removing that forced Chewbacca was on another ship twist, but more importantly making Rey envious of his power, making Rey think that the light side just isn't good enough, and if she really wants to save her friends in the future, to beat Kylo Ren in her next engagement with him, she'll need to tap into that same power Kylo does to do it. Like, that's how you do a character arc. You tempt your protagonist into indulging in the forbidden, not scaring them away from it like Abrams does. But now we give Rey her first slap in the face, her first hints that her want is terribly wrong. Something awful happens. Maybe Chewie gets kidnapped, seeing as that's already in the film, or it could be anything else. But the important part is that she tries to stop it with her new powers, but she's still not powerful enough. She still fails to stop this terrible thing from happening. And again, she convinces herself that it happened because of her and how weak she is. We see this make her feel even more guilty. She gets even more agitated and easily frustrated. At this point, Finn's disagreement with her has stopped being him saying, maybe you should be cautious, and now it's become a fully fledged shouting match as they argue about what she's becoming, and the inner party conflict grows and her friendships grow even more strained. Like, her need in this whole arc is to realise that it's impossible to exert total control. Sometimes awful things happen and it truly is impossible to stop them, and you should never blame yourself for everything that happens. And also she's got to realise that the light side is equally as powerful as the dark side, but the dark side is just more seductive. Like, it's easier for her to reach her max power potential, but she could be equally as powerful if she just trained more with the light side. But she doesn't realise that need yet, and now she falls even deeper into the dark. And I firmly believe that if Abrams didn't per se do exactly this, but he gave Rey an equally as interesting arc, far more people would have loved this movie. But we'll definitely need another change to flesh out her arc more and make it even more engaging. Like, when Rey speaks to Luke's Force Ghost on the island, she says that he always lied to her. The dark side is more powerful. Luke says no, it's not, and they go back and forth in an argument, and just when Rey's about to leave, Luke sighs, does something that's clearly his last resort. He reaches out, and we see the water in the ocean bubble, and then this massive, ridiculously large island of rock, something that is 1,000 times bigger than any rock she's ever lifted, hovers in the sky, and Luke shows Rey that the dark side isn't more powerful, it's just more seductive. But despite this visual clue that Rey is wrong, she still storms away and refuses to listen to what he has to say. And now, after all this happens in this revised arc, as the audience is already feeling like considerable fear that Rey will fully fall to the dark side, Palpatine establishes that he's not with Kylo Ren, he's his own faction, a faction that Rey's never actually got to see do evil things because that was all before her time. And Palpatine tells her that he needs a protege, an enforcer to carry out his will and spearhead the next generation of Sith. And he promises that she will be the most powerful person in the galaxy. Nobody will defy her and survive to talk about it. And we see the hunger in Rey's eyes as he says that. We just see it in her face, how much she craves that power, if only so she can protect her friends. And the sheer difficulty of this choice for Rey is something that the audience really feels. Like, if Abrams approached Rey like that, it would have made Palpatine's offer of like a so much more compelling moment, as the audience really does believe that she might take him up on the offer. And just as she's about to fall to the dark side and strike him down and take him up on the offer, she looks to her friends and realizes how terrified they are of her. Or maybe she looks in a puddle and sees her pale face and sunken eyes, and she just staggers back and has a reality check where she realizes that she's become the enemy that she always fought against, and she finally realizes her need. God, I would have loved it if Abrams gave Rey an actually fleshed out arc like that. Like, it would have done so much to remedy this movie's flaws. So right now, I'm working on what I would say is the largest project I've ever made for this channel, and hopefully it'll be out by the end of the month. It's something that I think a lot of you will be really interested in, and it's going to be a full retrospective on this recent Star Wars trilogy, and I'll be asking why were so many fans just disappointed with it. It's probably going to be an hour-long video essay, the longest video I've ever made, and I can't wait to get it out for you guys. Anyway, if you guys like this channel and want to support me make more of these videos, please do hit that Patreon link in the description and support me there. To my patrons, like, your support is incredibly valuable to me. Like, it really is helping me live my dream and do this full time. And even if you can only pledge like $1, that helps me out massively, especially when you guys do that as a group. But anyway, thanks for watching, please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time on The Closer Look.